Hi everybody, I'm Sherry Brody and I am so excited to be here with you today. Today I wanted to do a little workshop on bangs. You know, the reason I decided to do it was I was recently in Tennessee, Nashville area, teaching my Classics of Haircutting workshop, which is a 2-day workshop that teaches all the foundations and artistic disciplines you need as a hairstylist to be able to create any haircut a client asks you for with confidence and be able to reproduce it. And during those classes, I always have time where I spend time with the stylist and have them asking me questions. And one of the questions that came up at this last class was, Sherry, could you share with us how to cut bangs, like different types of bangs? And I was really surprised by it because this comes up a lot over the last couple of years. I've found it when I'm going through feeds and stuff, and people asking questions about that. And so I decided that I would start doing my lives with teaching those bangs, specifically for those stylists out there that aren't quite sure of how to start your bangs. Where do I part off at? How do I know if it's going to work on my client? And these things are so important as a hairstylist because clients that sit in your chair, if they don't like their bangs, a lot of times they're not going to come back. They're not going to have a lot of confidence in you as a hairstylist. So knowing how to cut bangs and understanding what to look for before you start the bangs and deciding on what's going to look best on your client is really important. So in this workshop today, I'm going to go over 3 different bang cutting techniques. One is, I call it a face frame bang. It's one of those bangs that, you know, clients ask for that kind of round off. They're kind of more C-shaped and they kind of blend into a face frame on the haircut, or it just kind of softly melts into the rest of the hair. Another popular one, and you've heard this before many times, is the curtain bang. We all call it something maybe a little bit differently, but these are bangs that are parted in the center and kind of want to feather off to the side. And then the third bang technique that I'm going to teach you is how to create a side swept bang. This one I use quite a bit actually, and I know that once you get through this class today that'll be one you'll use a lot as well. But the other things I'm going to talk to you about is the 3 things that you need to check out first before even starting the technique. So before we get started, I want to tell you right now that I'm doing this all by myself. I have not done a ton of lives, but I want to answer all your questions. So if you're here live with me, I encourage you can put your questions in the comments, but I won't get to it till the very end. At the very end of this, I will stay on and go through the comments and answer any of the questions that seem to pop up. Or if you're watching this after the live, put a comment in there and I will see it and I'll be sure to answer it in the comments or personally message you as well. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing that I want to go over is the 3, well actually let me show you the techniques that we're going to do first. That's what I'm going to do first. Okay. So the first one is, I just call it a face frame bang. And the reason I call it that is because you can see how it kind of goes a little bit, it's a little bit shorter in the center where the nose is and then kind of rounds out. That shape is really ideal for that client that wants it to kind of melt into their hairstyle, or in this case, this is more of like a shag haircut. I wanted that fringe to just melt into the sides. And along with this technique, I'm also going to share with you how to remove the bulk and how to create that wispy vibe that it looks so much better with your shag haircuts. The other one that I'm going to share with you is how to create a side swept bang. These are really popular. Clients like to have their hair parted on the side. The majority of our clients, I don't know about you, but I'm always like, so what side do you part your hair on? It doesn't matter whether I've been doing their hair for a couple of years. I don't know why. I seem to forget it. But I'll always remember what's going on in their life, right? Can you relate to that? But anyway, a side swept bang, this one is a really, really popular one. with my clients working behind the chair. And it's one that, you know, when they're combing it off to the side, the hair just wants to move to the side. So I'm going to teach you how to create that side swept bang and create that movement. And also I'll show you a little bit as well in the face frame bang. I'll also be able to show you as well how to remove a little bit of weight on your thicker haired clients and create a little bit more movement and like kind of like piece it out a little bit so it's not so solid looking. And the last one we're going to do, and I'll probably do them not in this order, but the heads are over here and I'm just kind of grabbing them as I go. But we're going to be doing a curtain bang. This one we're seeing all over social media. We have for a while now. And this one I just wanted to throw in here because really, honestly, when I teach you this technique, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's so easy and it makes so much sense. So, all right. So, the three things that you want to look for on your client before you even start is you want to investigate their head shape, you want to look at their growth patterns, and you want to look at the density and the texture of the hair. So when I talk about looking at the head shape, let me make sure you guys can see this. This is just a bald head that I drew on, but I want to reference it because I think it's really important before you even decide to start to cut your bangs. You've really got to isolate that frontal bone area. And the way we find that is, let me find my comb here. You can set your comb just kind of in the front of your client's face here and just kind of let it fall forward. And you can see where that kind of lifts off the head. When I bring it forward, see where it's just sitting on the head shape and then where it lifts off? That's where you're going to start your isolating it. This is where you're going to create your parting. And you're going to separate it, the frontal bone area from the whole rest of the head shape. I see this a lot on clients that come in and they're very nervous about getting their bangs cut because in the past they've had bangs that were cut too far back. Now, if you know your head shape, if you don't, that's okay. I'm going to go over it right now for you so you understand what I'm talking about. But understanding your client's head shape is so important in being able to master your bang cutting technique. So when we set the comb on top of the head, wherever it sits completely flat and it evenly comes off the head on both sides, that's your apex. That's the highest point of the head. Now, if you notice, when I bring the comb forward where it starts to angle down and it kind of teeter-totters there, that's the end of the frontal bone. And when you're creating a fringe, you don't want to go past that. When you start to go past that area here and up into the apex and the top of the head, then you're going to compromise their styling ability. They're going to have this indent between their style and the bangs. So I just want to encourage you to take the time before you even begin cutting your client's hair, is take the time to investigate their head shape. So when a client sits in my chair, a lot of times I will stand behind them in the mirror and kind of look at them and kind of run my hand over their head and kind of feel what it feels like, so that I'm comfortable with the head shape and I know where to part it off. The next thing that you want to look for is the growth patterns that are happening here along the hairline. By pulling the hair back away from the face and looking at it, you can see if they've got like a widow's peak where it comes pointing in the center, or a lot of times what happens is we have, swirls and a lot of movement in the bang. And you need to make sure that you're very aware of that, because if somebody's wanting a curtain bang that parts in the center and moves off to the side, but yet they have a really strong growth pattern off to the right that swirls, they're going to struggle with that because the hair is going to want to part where that cowlick is. Or if they want a face frame fringe and they have a lot of movement in their hairline, that client the chances are they're not going to be happy with it. Even if you gave them the perfect bang cut, if they have a lot of swirls and movement in their hairline and they're not knowledgeable or have the time to continually blow dry their hair, they're not going to be happy. And the other thing that you want to look for, the third thing to look for, is the density of hair around the hairline. So my clientele, I tend to have clients that, the majority of my clients, I should say, I have all ages, but the majority of my clients are kind of in between their early 40s and into their 70s. And so within that phrase, that those years, we as women tend to recede in the recession area. And that recession area sits kind of right there at the edge of the frontal bone, right there above the eyebrow there. But I always look at that because a lot of times they're a lot thinner there, or they don't have, or they have a space that is almost bald there. So you want to be aware of that as well. And just looking at the thickness and texture of the hair on a face frame fringe, like I had shared with you, like this one, which I'm going to cut this one first. You can see that they need to have some thickness here in the front. If the hair is too fine and thin, then I'm probably going to talk them into something a little bit different or modify it for them. In this class today, I'm just going to be sharing the 3 basic techniques, and maybe down the road we can do a class or whatever on going in deeper on cutting bangs on somebody with really fine thin hair, and just going into some tips and some techniques that you can use to create beautiful bangs on those clients as well. And like I said earlier on, if there's something you want to learn or that you're struggling with, hair cutting is my thing. It's something I've been teaching for years and years. I love it, and I would love to help you with that. That's the whole reason I started Hairstylist Hub. So be sure to, let me know in there what you would like to learn, and I will make sure that I have a class on it. Okay? So anyways, so the 3 things, just to cover it again, is the 3 things you want to check for is the head shape. Make sure that you're aware of where the frontal bone begins and ends, so that you know that where to isolate that section, so you're just working in that section, you're not cutting hair within the style of the haircut. Looking at pulling the hair back and looking at the growth patterns that are happening around the hairline. That's so important. And also looking at the density of the hair. How thick is it? Is it thicker on one side than the other, or more in the center, or is it really thin around the recession areas? Okay? Those are the 3 things that you want to look for before even beginning. So, let's get started. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to wet it down just a little bit. Now when I'm cutting bangs, I recommend getting the hair, keeping the hair wet, but having it not sopping wet. You want to be able to let the hair talk to you. You want to be able to see where where it wants to move. When I say that, that's so important, because sometimes when it's really wet and we're using a lot of tension, we won't see where it wants to bounce or where it tends to want to go. So right now, and this is what I do on all of my clients too, is I'll just kind of comb it and kind of see what it's wanting to do. And then a lot of times you can just easily just kind of take your fingers and your comb, and it's just going to automatically just separate there. As you can see, it's just going to separate right at the edge of the brow, right at the recession area. Unless I'm doing a specific look, more of kind of a aggressive or avant-garde look, like maybe a box bang like Sassoon does, and I'm cutting a real square bang, then I'll cut past that. But the whole purpose of this class today is to share with you 3 bang cutting techniques that are super simple and that are highly requested, and that you can take back and use today behind the chair. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to do that on both sides of the head. There again, I'm just kind of letting it talk to me, and like I said, see, it just automatically separates there. Now I just want to go in here and make sure that I'm not going back too far, and right now it is a little bit far back. So I'm just going to come back here. And I do kind of recommend doing, depending on your client, on how thick you're going to create it, but kind of creating kind of a triangular section using the point right at the tip of the top of the frontal bone and then exiting down here right at the recession area. And just a little side note, if I had somebody that didn't have, that had really, really thick hair and they didn't want as much of a fringe or bang, then I would drop down here and I would do less. Okay? I'm going to do that. So just so you know the comb, and just to tell you what tools I'm using here today, I am using just a very simple Cleopatra 420 comb. I don't know if you can see that. I like this comb. It's nothing fancy. It's very inexpensive. You can get it at Cosmoprof, most beauty supply stores. But I like it because it's super lightweight. It's nice to hold in my hand. It's got a side here that's got fine teeth for control, but yet it's got the wider teeth as well on the other side of it, that when I'm combing the hair and I want to be able to let the hair talk to me a little bit and I don't want a lot of tension on the hair, it allows it to do that, but it still gives me control. Okay? And the clips that I'm using are by Froma. I love these clips. I use these in all my cutting just because they hold the hair nice and secure and tight and they're not bulky. All right. So let me get my scissors out of here. I left my scissor case at the salon, so I've got my scissors in the back of my pocket here. So I'm going to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, all right. So the first thing what we're going to do is I'm just going to take the hair and comb it very neatly into the center, and I'm holding it with my hands, okay? I keep glancing over here because my camera's here and my screen is here. So when you see me glancing over here, it's because then I can see what's happening on the screen, all right? So anyway, so I've got it in the palm of my hand and I'm making sure that there's no gathering up here at the root area at all. I just want it nice and smooth and it's combing straight down from where it lives, and I'm going to secure it in my hands. And then I'm just going to take it and I'm going to just turn it to the right, all right? And then grab it with my fingers, okay? Now, as you can see, when we're doing this, the hair that's coming from here is coming straight down, so that's going to be shorter. But the hair that's coming from either side of here is traveling farther to get to the center. And then I'm twisting it on top of that, so it's got to travel a little bit more, okay? I'm going to do that one more time so that you can see it again. I'm going to comb it into the center here. And then I'm just going to grab it with my finger and my thumb, and I'm just going to twist it. Very simple, okay? And now I'm just going to cut it off. In case you're wondering what scissors I'm using, I am using some scissors by Shark Fin Shears. These are a 6-inch blade. I like these because they have a nice pointy edge to them, but the blade itself is just long enough for me to use. It's not too short, so it's perfect for my hand size. But as you can see, when I pull that back out, you can see how you've got a nice rounded shape there. Super simple, right? Now on a lot of clients, if they have some texture to their hair already and they want a little bit thicker and density to the perimeter of the hair, and they want just a heavier fringe, then this is it. You can leave it just like that. But a lot of times I use this bang cutting technique on clients that tend to have a lot more thickness to the hair. So we're going to take this and we're going to show you 2 more tips on how to personalize this bang for your client. So let's say you have a client that has really thick hair, a lot of hair there in the front, and you just want to create a little bit of movement in it and lighten it up around the perimeter here. So super easy, simple techniques. I'm going to stand behind her. I'm just going to kind of pull it up. I'm going to pull it out to where I can see. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to pull it up so you can see it up close. There we go. See there, underneath there? That's my link that I created. I don't want to cut into that. So I'm being very aware, and I'm just going to kind of lightly walk it up a little bit, and I'm just going to elevate it a bit. There's my guide, and I'm just going to point cut this off. As you can see, I'm just going straight in, kind of slightly at an angle. The more straight in you go with your scissors, the softer the line will be. But what this is doing is it's creating a little bit of some graduation there around the perimeter of it. And you can see you get a little bit more movement in that. Can you see that? So that's just a really easy tip. When you're cutting your bangs, you create the perimeter, create your shape, but then you want to have it move a little bit. By adding a little bit of some graduation there at the perimeter, you create this nice texture along the bottom. Now let's take it one step further. I am going to pull out a pair of, these are shark fin shears. This is their 30 blade texturizer, and I'm just going to use it to create some movement. I want the bangs to, like in this mannequin that we did, I want to create some pieciness and some movement to it. So I'm going to use my 30 tooth texturizing shear in this instance. You could use on really thick hair, you could use one that is more of a channel cut shear, like this one. This is another one by Shark Fin. I'll use this on people that have, oh my gosh, like really, really thick hair, because it just really like opens up space in the bangs. And you can use it just exactly the same way I'm using these. All right, that's for another video another time. So I'm going to turn her sideways so you can see what I'm doing, because there's just kind of a little technique to this. Now I not only want to remove some weight, but I want to create to where it wants to kind of poof out and give some texture and movement to it. So I'm going to create what I call shape within shape in the haircut. So I'm just going to pull it out. I'm taking a vertical section. I'm pulling it straight out from the head, and I'm going to angle my hand so that it's mirroring the shape of the head, because the head is round, right? So I'm just got my fingers and it's pulled straight out from the head, and my fingers here on the end are right at the length that I established in the perimeter. And I'm going to pull this out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and cut one, and I'm going to walk the shears up, and I'm going to open and close until I reach the ends. Okay? And what that does is it creates that piecey vibe that you saw in the other haircut, in the pre-done model that I did. So let's do that again. We're going to do another section here. Everybody's head is going to be a little bit different on how many sections you're going to take. I'm going to pull this straight out. There is my length. My fingers are mirroring the head shape. And I'm just going to go in, walk up. Now you don't want to open and close, because you can have a tendency to cut too much. So I'm more, be patient, take your time, and walk it slowly. Every time I'm opening and closing the shears, I'm cutting hair off. Now you can see the difference in that one side on this side versus that side. You see that? We'll do it again on this side. We'll do one more. As you can see there, you've created this nice face framing fringe that just kind of melts into the rest of the hairstyle. And we've removed weight so it can be a little piecier. But we also create a graduation around the perimeter of it, so it gives it movement and life. All right? So that is a face frame fringe. The next one we're going to do is the curtain bang. All right, this is what the curtain bang looks like. Put it up here so you can see it. So you can see on the curtain bang how, it just like wants to feather back. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating a layer in the hair. We're going to be creating a layer from shorter to longer. Now, why do I say that? Because I want you to go back to when you learned how to cut hair and think about one of the disciplines of it, or the techniques of it. Short hair, like cutting some short hair, pushes and directs long hair. Okay, do you remember that? Short hair is stronger, long hair is weaker. So when you want the hair to move in a certain direction, you want to have the short hair pushing and directing the longer hair into the direction that you want it to go. So in this instance, we're going to have the shorter hair in the center, and it's going to slowly get longer as we get towards the edge of the eye over to the recession area. Okay? Now in this instance, we're going to use the same mannequin on this one as well. So I'm just going to wet her down just a little bit. Okay. Let me get my scissors out of my back pocket. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is you've got to establish your length. Now we're going to be going just a little bit shorter on this technique because I'm using the same mannequin head. Most of the time, a curtain bang is going to be cut probably about, probably about the eyebrow or a little bit below. I use it a lot as well when I'm doing a face frame on somebody who wants little hairs that kind of peek out here on their cheek when they pull their hair up. I'll use this technique with that as well. So we're going to first start our first section. We've already got it isolated. Our frontal bone area is parted off. Turn her to the side so you can see. We're going to take our first section and we're going to establish our length. And just like when I was creating the texture in the hair, I'm going to be doing the same finger hand. I'm getting tongue-tied. I need to take a drink of water is what I need to do. But I'm going to be taking my fingers and holding it parallel to the head shape. If it was out here, I'd be doing the same thing. All right? Because you're creating a layer. So I'm pulling it straight out from the head. And I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to pull it down. So you can see I created a layer. Now I'm going to work off with sections. I'm going to work in diagonal parting. So I'm going to take another section here, or diagonal sectioning. I'm going to take another section here, and I'm going to pull it over to the center. So I'm going to have a stationary guide, and I'm going to pull each section over to the center, because I want it to get longer as it gets over here to the recession area. Okay? So we've got our guide already, so I'm going to take another section here. And one of my mottos is when I'm layering hair is I always have more hair in my guide and less hair in the section I'm going to cut. Because, as you can see this from the side, I can see my guide. I have no question on where I'm going to cut. So I'm going to pull it out. My fingers are mirroring the guide, and I'm just going to cut. Whoops. I'm going to go to the opposite side, and I'm going to take a diagonal section on the opposite side and pull it to the center. Now, the reason I go from side to side is because it keeps you balanced. Now, when I'm working on my client, I'm always looking at them in the mirror and making sure that the hair that I'm pulling out straight from the head, my stationary guide, is still being straight out from the head from where it lives. Because it's very easy to be talking to your client and all of a sudden you're over here, or you're pushing it this way, and then you're not going to get a nice even curtain bang on either side. Okay, so that's just one of the artistic disciplines that you want to have when you're doing this, is to make sure that your body's staying in the same place and that you're very aware of that stationary guide, that it's being pulled out straight from the head and you're not pushing or pulling it in either direction. So I'm just going to work from side to side and pulling everything to the center. And that's where it comes in about shorter hair pushing and directing longer hair. So it only makes sense that if you want a curtain bang is parted down the center and it sweeps all the hair back, right? So you want to have the hair shorter in the center so that it pushes and directs the hair away from it, off to either side. Pull her up so you can see it. So yes, this is a shorter version of it, but that is how you create a curtain bang. So just to kind of go back over what I shared with you, we isolated the frontal bone area. We created a guide in the center at the nose area and created our shortest length. That length we established during our consultation. And we're thinking in our head too, when we establish that length, of, is the hair curly? Because if it's curly, it's going to kick up a little bit. So you want to make sure your length that you establish in that first section, that first guide, is right on target, because bangs are huge, guys. Clients have to look at them every day. I don't know about you, but I've had some pretty wonky bangs in my day. My mother used to cut my bangs when I was a kid, so I had some pretty crazy bangs. So anyways, we established a guide in the center, and then we're just going to work from side to side, taking a diagonal parting. And when I say diagonal parting, I just mean we're just kind of taking a slow diagonal and letting the comb follow the head shape. And so it just ends up being kind of diagonal because the head is round. So if you're holding your comb just really lightly, not heavy-handed, but just really lightly, like I'm holding it with my third finger or my second finger and my thumb, almost like if somebody were to come up behind me and tap my comb, it would fall out of my hand. If you can get to a point where you've practiced this technique enough, then that's where you want to get, because then you're just really loose and the comb is just going to glide down the head shape, and it's just going to be very easy for you to create those diagonal sections. So anyway, take the next section, but make sure that it's thin enough that you can see your guide, and then you're going to pull it over to the center guide. And there again, take note of where you're at. Keep an eye in the mirror when you're cutting your client, so that you aren't, so you're aware that your body's not moving, the hair's not moving from one side to the other, so that you're even, okay? And then just work from side to side so that it's even. And then when you're done, you're going to get this nice movement and a nice curtain bang, okay? Let me see, something's asked here. Okay. All right, so the last but not least, we're going to create the side swept bang. This is one that is asked for a lot with my clients. And when I start cutting this, you're going to see why I chose to do the curtain bang first. Because we're going to still use the same technique that we used in the curtain bang, but we're going to use it in the side swept bang. But instead of starting at the center, we're going to start on the side that they part their hair on. And we're going to work the hair towards that piece there, all right? I am just getting my mannequin head here, because we need a new one for this one. That is my dog. That is my dog, Brandy. She is a small dog. She likes to think she's a guard dog, but she is not. She's a cute little Well, not little, but she's a little Wheaten Terrier Lab mix. She's just the light of my life. Okay, so you can see I just wet it down just a little bit. Could I cut this on dry hair? Absolutely. Absolutely I could. I would only cut it on the dry hair if I had the hair prepared the way the client's gonna style her hair. Like if I didn't prep this mannequin head, but if I was gonna, when I cut hair, a lot of times bangs, when I'm cutting fringe and bangs, if I have a client that has a lot of bounce in their hairline, I will 9 times out of 10 always cut it dry, always. But I'll smooth it out and get all the kinks out of it and make sure it's smooth while I'm cutting. I can see exactly what it's going to want to do. All right. So in this instance, I'm going to make her hair part on her right side, moving to her left. Now I'm not going to be using a stationary guide because I want it to move just a little bit. As you can see in the haircut, the model that I already did, she's got movement all the way through it. If I were to have a stationary guide, which there's nothing wrong with that, I would only use it if I were going to go from this area here layered and I was going to go to really long on the other side. So if you were going to go for more of a really strong asymmetrical look, then I would definitely use the same technique as the curtain bang and have a stationary guide. But I'm going to use a traveling guide, not heavily traveling. I'm still going to be bringing everything to each guide that I have, but not to the same guide that I started with. As I get going in here, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick. Okay. All right, so I'm going to establish my guide right over the middle of the eye, right in the middle of the part where she's going to part. And I want to establish it, I'm going to do it right below the eye at the cheekbone. So I'm going to pull it straight out here, kind of come down, measure, and then pull her up. And there again, I'm just going to mirror my fingers to her head shape. Make sure you can see that. There. It's probably better you get this view here, I think. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm going to pull this straight out. I want to make sure I get a substantial guide here to start. So there you can see we've established our length. All right. Now I'm just going to walk over here, take a section, my next section, and I'm going to hold on a moment, guys. This is alive, so this stuff happens. Hey, quiet. Stop. Quiet down. Alright, so now we've established our guide and I'm just bringing that next section that I created over to it. Now I'm making sure that I can see my guide. See, I can see my guide in there. If you can't see your guide, go back and take a thinner section, okay? Alright, and now I'm going to work to this other side, and there's not a whole lot on this side, so I'm just going to kind of move my guide a little bit over to the left. I'm not all the way over here, I'm just slightly moving it. And I'm pulling the other section over to it. So when I talk about it's not a stationary guide, what I'm saying is we're not bringing everything to this. So each time I take a section, I'm kind of, that next section is my guide, and I'm bringing the next section and I'm bringing it over to that section. Then on the next section, I'm using the section I just cut, and then getting my next part, my next section, and bringing it to that section. So you're just bringing each section over to the last section, okay? And as I'm looking at this, I need to angle a little bit more. I'm not seeing enough pieciness in here, enough movement. So I'm going to break this back down, and I am going to angle my fingers a little bit more this way. So a little bit more from longer to shorter. So I create a little bit more of a piecey effect in the perimeter of the hair. Okay. There's my guide. Mirror that section. That's better. And then I'm just working my way around, kind of working off almost pie. So I've got my section here that I created, and then I'm taking another section here, another section here, and pulling it over. And I'm doing the same here. Here's my guide. Now my next section is here, then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. I'm literally working kind of in pie sections, okay? There's my guide. You can see the difference in the angle that I had created to begin with. That's one of the old sections I had just cut. And then decided to go back in and change my angle. The angle that you hold your fingers is so important on how it's going to look in the perimeter of the hair. So I'm literally kind of a little bit shorter in here and a little bit longer in the perimeter. That's going to give you that layered effect. That's going to give you that kind of a little bit more piecey effect in the perimeter. There again, I'm just taking that section over to my last section, over directing a little bit. And then as I get closer to the side of the final push there at the recession area, I'm just going to pull all that over to the last section. And then I'm going to cut. So as you can see, what we've created here is a nice side swept bang. So if I were to take this and just kind of double check if I wanted a little bit more movement and a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more of a shorter area here, I'm literally just going to pull everything to that middle of the iris of the eye on the left, and I'm just going to go in and just kind of fine tune it a smidge. The littlest bit makes the biggest difference. I'm letting this dry so that you can kind of see that. See how that's starting to move? Okay. So just like in the last two, I created some pieciness and just some airiness to the fringe. I'm going to do that with this as well, so you can see the difference that it makes. Now in this instance, I'm just going to kind of go in and just kind of break it up, and then dropping it, and I'm looking at it. This is where your eye comes in. When you're visually fine-tuning your haircut when it's dry, that's when your creativity and your eye is going to set your work apart. And what I mean by your eye is, we as artists, we see things differently. And when you started your fringe, you had to have had a vision inside your head of what you want it to look like, right? So when you dry it, and that's where you kind of go through and you go, okay, let's see, this is a little bit thick here, so what do I need to do to soften that line? Well, I just need to kind of go in here on the edge and just kind of soften it. Right before I did this, I wanted this to be just a little bit shorter and a little bit wispier, so I kind of came back in, angled my fingers a little bit more inward a little bit so that it's shorter to longer here, and cut just a little bit off. Not a lot, because the littlest bit makes all the difference. So I talk about that because being a hairstylist, we're all artists and we want to be creative. But you have to have artistic disciplines in place and plan of action for your haircuts and your styles to look the way you want them to look, but last. Because we have to be able to duplicate our work. If we can't duplicate our work, clients aren't going to come back. And we need our clients to come back. They're the blood of our business. Without them, we have nothing. So that's why I talk about artistic disciplines. You know, I'm thinking in my head, I'm not just blindly going in here and taking my texturizing shear in. I'm just going in at an angle because I know it's just going to kind of create airiness in the hair. I'm not going in too deep. I just want to go in maybe about a 1/4 inch from the end because I've already got my layers established. I don't want to thin it out in here. I just want it a bit piecier along the perimeter. You see what I'm saying? Being able to think in your head and know what you need to do, why you're doing it is so important. Okay? And then of course how. And then this last section, I'm just looking at it. I feel like she's just a little bit heavy along that edge there. So I'm just going to pull this up. And I'm just going to kind of just turn this to the side so you can see it. I'm just going to kind of go in here and lighten this up. I just want to see how that plays. And as I'm looking at her, I'm liking that. But I feel like she's just a little bit heavy here. I think she needs a little bit more layering right there. So I'm going to switch my shears here. And remember what I did before? I kind of brought it up and then angled my hand or my finger so that it was shorter to longer. So I know I need to do that here to create that. So I'm going to just pull up that one section there. And what I did was, I know I over-directed it a little bit farther because in my brain I'm like, I didn't know how long I wanted to leave it. So sometimes I will leave it a little bit longer than I think, and then when it's dry, I'll go back to it and look at it. And sometimes I love it and I'm right on the money and I love that I left it that way. But like in this instance, I know I want it to be a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to kind of pull it forward a little bit. And I'm going to take a little bit more length off that, okay? See how that creates that little bit more layer there? Can you see the difference? I hope that you can, because I think as hairstylists, I could teach you all the techniques in the world, but if you can't see it, then you're not going to understand it. So let's pull these sides down so you can kind of see them together now. So now you can see how that hair just wants to move. Yeah. So this technique I use a lot. I use a lot on my clients with short hair. This is another one I use it on. I did. This is like a bob, like a kind of a short bob layered haircut. I created a longer version of that. This is where you would kind of bring everything to the center of the left eye, and then you can see how it's layered here, and then it goes slowly to not so much layering. That's where we would use a stationary guide to kind of get a look like this, okay? All right, so we are coming to a close of this live, and I first want to thank you for watching it, and I hope that the techniques that I shared with you here today